If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Chapter 1. The Fitting That Wasn't For Me. They said I should feel lucky to marry into money, but luck felt cheap the day his ex modeled my wedding dress while his mother watched. She called me the practical bride and sent the bill to my company like my name was her servant's tab. That was the moment I stopped being their story's decoration. My name is Elena Ward, and they taught me what elegance without ethics really looks like. So I taught them what revenge with dignity feels like. The sunlight over Tribeca was too perfect that morning, the kind that made glass sparkle and mistakes look intentional. I arrived at Maison Verte Bridal Atelier exactly at 10, the time Vivian Hargrove had requested. She greeted me in the doorway, every inch of her polished and precise. Her pearl earrings, her silk scarf, her faint smile. She spoke softly like someone used to being obeyed. "We want something timeless," she said, "something that fits the Hargrove family tradition." Inside the boutique looked like a jewelry box. Chandeliers glimmered over racks of white silk and lace. The air smelled of gardenia and champagne. I tried to match the tone, polite, neutral, grateful. My fiancé's mother had insisted on handling the fitting. She said she wanted to make the process easy for me. Easy usually meant controlled. Before I could reply, a familiar laugh echoed from the back room. Sabrina Lowell stepped out from behind a curtain, all soft curls and polished skin. I knew her face from magazines and her name from Grant's past. His ex, a lifestyle influencer who had recently announced a creative partnership with Maison Verte. She smiled, a flash of practiced warmth. "I just came to help pick styles," she said lightly. Vivian turned to me, her smile unchanged. "Isn't that thoughtful of her?" I nodded once. The manager approached, nervous energy behind perfect posture. "Of course, Miss Ward, we've pulled a few options within your range." I blinked. Within my range? Sabrina was already sipping champagne as an assistant zipped her into a gown that looked like liquid moonlight, a custom piece tagged at $22,000. Mine were simpler, neatly pressed samples with small tears at the seams, the kind worn by other brides before me. Grant arrived 20 minutes late. He kissed my cheek, distracted, and apologized in a whisper. "Traffic from Midtown." His mother brushed off the excuse. She guided him to a chair and poured him champagne as if he were the guest of honor, not the groom. The staff fluttered around Sabrina, fastening silk at her waist, adjusting the train. She spun once in front of the mirror, the skirt catching the light. Vivian watched her like a proud curator. "She has the perfect frame, doesn't she?" she said to no one in particular. The comment floated through the room like perfume, invisible but heavy. My reflection stared back at me from the opposite mirror. Calm, professional, unbothered. That was the role I played well. I stepped into the fitting room and slipped into one of the sample dresses. The zipper stuck halfway and an assistant offered to help. Her tone carried pity, the kind reserved for customers who couldn't afford what they wanted. I smiled, thanked her, and walked out. The fabric scratched slightly at my ribs. Sabrina gasped in admiration at her own gown and twirled again. She asked Grant's opinion. He smiled and said, "You look great." When Vivian leaned toward the boutique manager, I caught her whisper, "She has the body that fits the Hargrove name." The words slid through my skin like ice. I straightened my posture, looked into the mirror, and adjusted the shoulder of the dress. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Silence can be sharper than any insult. The manager called out, apologetic but distracted. "There's been a mix-up with the reserved gown. Miss Lowell is wearing it." The words fell flat between us. Sabrina froze, then laughed, pretending it was funny. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize." The manager rushed over, flustered. "Miss Ward, we can find another option for you." I said it was fine. I had already seen enough. Grant stood uncertain, glancing between us. He didn't understand what had happened. Men like him rarely did. He touched my hand gently. "We can come back another day if this isn't working." I looked at him, at the man I thought I knew, and said no. Let them finish what they started. They fussed around Sabrina for another half hour, measuring, adjusting, complimenting. When she finally stepped out of the gown, the fabric creased slightly at the waist. The manager turned to me hesitant. "Would you still like to try it?" I shook my head. Some things once worn don't fit the same way again. At the counter, Vivian handled the paperwork. Her tone shifted back to polite efficiency. "Oh, and please send the invoice to Ward and Company Communications. They handle our PR affairs." I paused watching her sign the receipt with a pen that probably cost more than my entire fitting. It wasn't just about humiliation. She wanted to tie my professional name to their family narrative, to use my company's reputation as decoration, while pretending I didn't belong in their world. As we left, Sabrina hugged Vivian and thanked her for the invite. Grant promised his mother dinner that night and offered to drive me home. I declined, saying I had errands downtown. He didn't question it. He never did. Outside, the city was loud again, honest in its chaos. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the wind move through my hair, the weight of the morning settling into clarity. Through the boutique window, I could still see the staff rearranging mannequins, the discarded samples, the champagne flutes. In the reflection of the glass, I saw myself not as a bride, but as a strategist. They had written the opening act of a story they didn't know I was already rewriting. I took out my phone, opened my email, and saved a copy of the booking confirmation from Maison Verte. The message from their manager included one line I would never forget. "We've adjusted the selection to suit her budget. It would sit in my archive quiet and patient." As I started walking, the words repeated softly in my head. "Within your range." I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I simply memorized every detail, the cost of the gown, the brand of champagne, the exact phrase his mother used. Some debts are best paid in precision. By the time I reached the corner of Greenwich and Franklin, the air smelled of coffee and rain. I felt strangely calm. The insult had already transformed into something else, something I could use. I looked back one last time at the glass doors of Maison Verte gleaming under the late morning sun. My reflection stared back still and composed. That was the moment I decided to stop fitting into anyone's story. From that day forward, I wasn't planning a wedding, I was preparing evidence. Chapter 2. Lace Labels and Lies. I walked to Soho on Monday with the steadiness of someone who had already decided what mattered. My office sits in a brick building that used to be a textile warehouse. Tall windows, raw beams, sun that finds the floor in perfect squares by late morning. Nina was already there with coffee and a look that meant news. She had a tablet in one hand and a stack of printouts in the other. She said the boutique was everywhere on social. A short clip of Sabrina in a white gown was being pushed by a dozen style accounts. The caption bragged that luxury looked effortless. I did not need to ask which session the footage came from. The angle was the same mirror that faced my fitting room door. We watched the loop twice. Sabrina tilted her chin and the chandelier caught the stones at her ears. Comments poured in. Nina said a former client of Maison Verte had tagged a friend and mentioned poor treatment. Another thread complained about deposits held hostage. None of it was proof on its own, but patterns speak. I told Nina to pull our file on Maison Verte. We had a light credentialing folder on them from months back when they sniffed around for agency support and then passed. We sat at the big table by the window and opened a shared doc. I asked for a clean timeline and a list of anyone we knew inside their organization. Nina typed while I spoke. I wanted positions, not names. If the head of marketing had come from a perfume house with a history of crisis spin, I wanted that logged. If the manager who handled fittings had come from a retailer that closed under a rain of class action complaints, I wanted that too. Nina cleared her throat and said there was more. She had received an anonymous tip over the weekend claiming the boutique was under internal audit for misuse of customer images. The message included a reference number and a date stamp from early spring. She looked up, checking my face. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. I told her to forward the tip to our legal team for verification and to log it as unconfirmed until we had corroboration. Then I asked her to pull every public-facing slogan and tagline the boutique had posted in the last year and to compare them against our trademark registry. Grant called at noon. He sounded warm and puzzled, as if the last week had been a misunderstanding that could be smoothed out with gentle words. He said his mother only wanted a joyful fitting. He said Sabrina had just dropped by to help, that it meant nothing. I listened with my hand still on the mouse. Then I told him I believed his mother had enjoyed herself very much. He paused, maybe waiting for laughter, and then asked if we were still on for dinner with his parents later in the week. I told him I had a deadline and that I would let him know. By afternoon, Nina had a pattern map on the screen. It showed Maison Verte content lines by quarter color coded for themes. There was a spike after January when Sabrina began appearing in their posts. There was also a quiet thread of borrowed language that made my jaw tighten. Nina had flagged 3 phrases that aligned too closely with our registered marks. One of them was ours to the letter. Ethics is the new luxury. We had filed and cleared that mark in late 2021 and had used it in presentations and white papers since the following spring. Nina dug deeper. She had a way of coaxing metadata out of stubborn files. She found a campaign deck labeled The Modern Bride in a public cache linked to a junior coordinator's portfolio. The deck referenced a request to borrow our slogan temporarily for a pending collaboration with Sabrina Lowell collection. It even named the date the request had been sent from a Maison Verte account to a personal address belonging to an outside consultant. The tone was casual. "We love the line, can we borrow it for a bit?" The file properties showed it had been edited twice in late May. Nina took screenshots of every screen she opened, then exported the deck and saved it to our secure drive. I asked her for a list of steps we would take for any client in our position. Not because I did not know them, but because process keeps fury from leaking into work. She recited the sequence from memory. Conflict check, legal review of marks and prior use, preservation notice for any communications that could be relevant to a dispute, external counsel looped in for a soft letter requesting immediate cessation of use. I told her to initiate the conflict check. Ward and Company would not touch their campaign in any capacity while we sorted the situation. We would not be the agency that polished a shoe while it stood on someone else's neck. Our in-house counsel picked up on the first ring. I briefed him on the clip, the caption, the internal audit rumor, and the discovery of our mark inside their planning deck. He asked for copies for a list of dates for the name of the junior coordinator whose cache Nina had accessed, and for a summary of any contact between our firm and the boutique since the first meeting last winter. I told him I wanted a letter out before close of business, asking them to halt any use of our registered language, and to confirm that any imagery from a session involving me would never be published without a signed release from me personally. He said he would draft both and include a line reserving our rights. We broke at 3 for coffee and air. Soho Street noise steadied me in a way a quiet room never could. Nina and I walked a block in silence. She finally said it felt personal. I said it was, but that work would protect us from doing anything we could not defend later. She asked if I wanted to call out the caption publicly. I told her public outrage burns fast and dies faster. We needed something that could hold light, not heat. Back at the office, my email blinked. Our counsel had sent a draft letter and a checklist for preserving evidence. I read the letter aloud so I could hear the shape of it. It was calm and exact. It identified our mark, our filings, our first use in commerce, and our continuous use since. It noted the cached deck described the file properties without overclaiming, and requested written assurance by end of week that all instances would be removed from pending materials. It also asked for confirmation that any assets featuring Sabrina in a gown reserved for me would not be published or referenced. We attached the checklist to our internal channel and logged the matter as active. Grant texted to ask again about dinner. He added a heart and said he missed me. I stared at the screen, then set the phone face down. Loving someone does not require liking the way they look away when a line is crossed. I walked to the window and watched a man hail a cab with 2 garment bags slung over his shoulder. Somewhere a truck backfired and a pigeon lifted into the slice of sky between buildings. The city never pauses, it just changes scenes. Nina came back with an update. She had found a press calendar in a password-protected folder that was embarrassingly easy to guess. The Modern Bride launch was set for mid-September to coincide with a trunk show at the boutique and a media brunch hosted by Sabrina. The working title for the opening panel was Luxury with a Conscience. There was a footnote that made Nina swear under her breath. It said the phrase "ethics is the new luxury" would anchor the panel signage. I felt the slow click of a lock inside my mind. I told Nina to prepare a neutral memo for the team. It would say that we had been approached by media outlets for background on the broader issue of classism in luxury retail. It would say we would provide industry context without naming any brand, that we would speak to best practices for informed consent and to the long-tail damage of performative inclusivity. It would say we would maintain professional distance and would not publish anything through our own channels. The memo would keep us clean and make sure no one on staff got pulled into a public fight on their personal accounts. The phone on my desk lit again. Maison Verte was calling. I let it ring and sent it to voicemail. 10 minutes later, an email arrived from their manager, polite and breezy. It thanked me for visiting, expressed regret for the fitting mix-up, and invited Ward and Company to discuss a potential collaboration for their fall launch. The last paragraph said they admired our thought leadership and were considering a campaign that aligned with our values. I forwarded the message to Council and to Nina with a single line: all future contact through legal. By late day, the office felt like a held breath. We had done what needed doing and no more. Nina shut down her screens and asked what I wanted to call the folder that held the deck and the emails. I told her to name it Mirror. She smiled the way people do when a word fits. Before she left, Nina hesitated in the doorway and asked if I was all right. I told her I was steady. Then I thanked her for the metadata pull and for catching the press calendar. She said this was why she wanted to work in crisis, because sometimes telling the truth requires building a platform that can hold it. After she was gone, I opened a blank document and began typing phrases in a column: clean service, fair access, transparent releases. I thought about the women who had messaged under the clip, the ones who said they had felt small in rooms where they were supposed to be honored. I thought about the way Vivian had smiled, as if kindness were a performance, and about the way Sabrina had twirled under the light. I did not wish them harm. I wished them a mirror they could not dim. The sun slid across the table and landed on the corner of my laptop. I reviewed the letter one more time, then authorized Council to send it. The timestamp read 5:47. I saved every file again to an external drive and wrote a short note to myself with 3 lines. Confirm trademark enforcement. Confirm internal audit existence. Confirm fall launch timeline. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Grant. He said he loved me, that he wanted me to feel safe, that he thought his mother might apologize if given the chance. I typed and erased 3 replies. Finally, I wrote that safety comes from respect. Then I set the phone down and shut the window against the night air. I closed my laptop and sat with the quiet. The city had turned from white to blue. Somewhere plates were being stacked and checked lists were being finalized for a brunch 3 months away. I felt the kind of calm that follows a clear decision. If they wanted the spotlight, they could have it. I would wait just off stage with dates, filings, and facts ready to turn the lights as high as they would go. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Chapter 3. The Bridal Luncheon Trap. The summer air in the Hamptons had the kind of polish that money buys. The Hargrove estate sat behind a long gravel drive lined with hydrangeas and silence. Staff in white shirts moved like clockwork under striped tents, setting out chilled wine and silver trays. The invitation had called it a ladies' luncheon to celebrate elegance and community. Everyone knew it was Vivian's way of staging perfection before the wedding. I arrived in a cream pantsuit, hair pinned low, no lace, no soft colors. The valet hesitated before taking my keys, as if the absence of a gown confused him. Inside, Vivian stood near a long table set for 20, every place card handwritten in gold. She looked up and smiled with precision. "Elena, darling, you made it." "We're so happy you could join us," she said. "Wouldn't miss it," I answered, letting the words settle without warmth. The crowd was a collage of curated faces, women from charity boards and private clubs, their laughter sharp and measured. Sabrina Lowell stood near the terrace, glowing under the midday light. Her dress, ivory with silver thread, looked like it had been designed to catch the exact shade of sunlight on the water. When she saw me, her smile widened. "Elena, this is such a coincidence," she said, voice bright enough for the group around her to hear. "Maison Verte just confirmed me as their brand ambassador this morning. Isn't that exciting?" Vivian placed a hand on Sabrina's shoulder. "Our family has always appreciated good taste," she said. "It's wonderful to see young women using their platforms responsibly." I looked at them both, the perfect tableau of approval. "It's good to see integrity trending," I said quietly. Vivian's eyes flickered, but the smile stayed. She moved down the table, rearranging napkins that didn't need adjusting. Sabrina turned to me, still performing. "You're glowing," she said. "Wedding planning suits you." "I suppose it does," I replied. "It teaches you what to keep and what to let go." Someone called for a toast. Vivian tapped her glass and the chatter faded. To family, she began her tone reverent, and to the beauty of shared values. She nodded toward Sabrina, who raised her glass like she belonged to that phrase. I raised mine too, but only halfway. After lunch, someone asked if I would say a few words. I stood feeling the eyes on me and looked around at the table. "Style can be bought," I said softly. "Character can't." For a moment, the air stilled, as if the garden itself had stopped breathing. Then came polite laughter, brittle as crystal. Vivian's smile tightened. When the luncheon ended, guests drifted to their cars, leaving behind perfume and gossip. Olivia Hart, the wedding planner, caught my arm near the side gate. Her voice dropped. "You should see this." She handed me an envelope, plain and unmarked. "It came through the vendor accounts this morning. You didn't get copied." Inside was an invoice from a PR agency listing Sabrina Lowell collaboration fee paid through the Hargrove Wedding Fund. I looked at Olivia. She nodded once. "It's real. I triple-checked the payment ID." Vivian signed it. The paper felt warm in my hands. "Thank you," I said. "Be careful," she whispered. "They play polished, but they play rough." Driving back to the city, I rolled the window down and let the salt air wash through. The invoice sat on the passenger seat beside my sunglasses. Vivian wasn't just manipulating appearances. She was using the wedding budget to sponsor Sabrina's image. In their world, reputation was an inheritance, not something earned. They were laundering class through a collaboration. That night at the office, Nina stayed late with me. We spread the documents across the table. She frowned as she read the header. "They paid her out of the wedding account. That's a breach of ethics, if this was any corporate setting." "It's not corporate," I said. "It's personal," which makes it worse. Nina opened her laptop and began tracing connections between Maison Verte's social team and Sabrina's management agency. Within minutes, she found a shared contractor listed on both payrolls. Same PR consultant, she said. They've been working together since January. We both knew what that meant. Maison Verte's campaign was never about modern brides. It was about restoring Sabrina's relevance through someone else's humiliation, my humiliation. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. Nina's message read, "Simply check Instagram." I opened the app and saw Sabrina's story at the top. A boomerang of her sipping coffee captioned, "Ethics first." The next clip was a photo from the April fitting me in a wrinkled sample gown, blurred but unmistakable. The tag read, "brand ethics, #ad." It didn't disclose any partnership. FTC guidelines were clear, but influencers always gambled on timing. The post had been live for 3 hours already, liked by tens of thousands. Nina called seconds later. "This crosses a line," she said. "It draws one," I replied. We documented everything. Screenshot, timestamp, user ID, archived URL. Nina filed a compliance note referencing the Federal Trade Commission disclosure rules. She'd interned in advertising law before joining my firm and understood what we could and couldn't say. If she doesn't clarify within 24 hours, this could escalate fast, she said. She won't clarify, I told her. She thinks this is checkmate. We sat in silence for a moment. The hum of the AC filled the room. Then Nina spoke again. What are you going to do? I'm not going to sue, I said. I'm going to communicate. That was when the outline for Toxic Luxury began to take shape. We built it as an anonymous white paper, an industry study about ethics in high-end fashion and bridal branding. No names, no accusations, just data and quotes from real clients who had shared experiences of being sidelined by boutiques chasing social clout. I had notes from 3 such clients who had reached out after seeing the viral clip of my fitting. They didn't know it was me, but they recognized the boutique. Nina handled the research poll. I wrote the framing narrative. We cited industry surveys, trademark filings, and consumer trust metrics. The tone was neutral, professional, impossible to attack. I titled the draft Toxic Luxury and printed it in clean serif font. When it was ready, I called a contact I had worked with years ago, a lifestyle journalist named Rachel Hart from New York Magazine. She answered on the second ring. Elena Ward, she said, laughing. It's been forever. What's the story? Not mine, I said. But one you should tell. I explained the premise, keeping names off the record. She asked the usual questions. Was it verifiable? Was it newsworthy? Could she get an independent source? I told her the documents were real and that I could point her toward patterns worth checking. She agreed to run it as a feature under the magazine's ethics column, scheduled for September, the same week Maison Verte planned its Modern Bride launch. After I hung up, Nina exhaled. That's bold, she said. It's alignment, I answered. They want attention. They'll get it. In the weeks that followed, I watched the Hargrove family's social circle move like tides. Vivian hosted charity teas. Sabrina attended brand events in borrowed gowns. Grant sent polite texts, always ending with hearts or apologies. I replied rarely. Distance was its own kind of clarity. Olivia emailed mid-July to confirm she had finalized vendor payments. She added a line at the bottom. Just so you know, they used the wedding fund to prepay Sabrina's panel fee for the fall fashion brunch. I thanked her and archived the message. By August, the Toxic Luxury layout was approved. Rachel sent a note confirming publication for mid-September. Nina and I reviewed the visuals one last time. The photos were abstract, blurred close-ups of silk, a camera lens reflecting light, the faint outline of a price tag. No faces, no defamation, just mirrors. One evening near the end of summer, Grant stopped by my office unannounced. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his eyes searching. You've been distant, he said. I miss how we used to be. Do you? I asked. He hesitated. My mother worries you're angry. I'm not angry, I said. I'm awake. He frowned, not understanding. I just want peace. Peace comes with honesty, I said. You should try it with her. He left without replying, the sound of his footsteps fading down the hall. I watched him go and felt the last thread of attachment pull loose. That night, I sat alone in the office with the final schedule on my screen. Toxic Luxury would drop on September 12th, the same morning Maison Verte unveiled the Modern Bride. The timing wasn't coincidence, it was symmetry. I saved the schedule, closed the file, and leaned back in my chair. The hum of the city outside sounded like applause, faint and distant. Sometimes you don't need to change the story, you only need to change who tells it. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Chapter 4. Exposure Day. The morning it broke, the city felt sharper. My phone lit up before sunrise first with notifications from news alerts, then with Nina's message that simply read, "It's out." I opened my browser. The headline filled the screen in tall, clean type, Toxic Luxury, when style loses its conscience. Rachel's byline sat below it. The article opened with a description of how prestige had learned to disguise prejudice, how luxury had become a mirror that reflected everything except ethics. Every word was careful source, deliberate. I scrolled further. There it was, the image from the internal audit. A blurred frame from the boutique security footage, One that showed a sales assistant smirking while a customer stepped into a gown. No faces, no names, only the suggestion of cruelty disguised as service. The caption read, "Example of what not to do." Rachel had quoted anonymous employees and included references to invoices and contracts. She wrote that the magazine had reached out to Maison Vert for comment prior to publication and received a generic statement about commitment to excellence. The legal phrasing was perfect. Within an hour, the article spread across every digital fashion feed. By noon, it had been reposted by 2 major business outlets. The comment sections were ruthless. Former clients shared stories, screenshots, receipts. Boutique staff tried to defend themselves, but the narrative had already turned. Nina walked into my office holding 2 coffees and a cautious expression. "They're getting torn apart online," she said. "Maison Vert's PR page shut down comments 20 minutes ago. Sabrina hasn't posted anything yet." "Give it time," I said. By early afternoon, emails from other luxury brands started to arrive, each one worded differently but with the same intent. They wanted to distance themselves from Maison Vert and asked if Ward & Company could help restructure their ethical branding strategies. 3 new contracts within a day. Ethics was profitable again. Then the phone rang. Grant. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice was tight. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said. "You humiliated my mother, Sabrina, the entire family. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" "It looks accurate," I replied. He exhaled sharply. "You could have come to me." "I did," I said quietly. "Many times. You just preferred not to listen." "She's devastated," he said. "You've destroyed them." "I didn't destroy anyone," I answered. "I just let the world see who they already were." There was a long pause, then the sound of him trying to find something that would fix it. But the words didn't come. I ended the call first. At 4, the reception desk buzzed. Vivian was downstairs. I met her in the conference room. She looked smaller than I remembered, though still dressed like a press photo. Her gloves were pale beige, her lipstick too steady for someone whose world was cracking. "Elena," she began, her voice low. "I'm sure you know why I'm here." "I do," I said. "I need you to retract the story. This has gone too far. You know how things spread online." "I don't control the press," I said. Her eyes flashed. "Don't play games. You gave them information." "I gave them context," I said. "Information they verified on their own." "You're ruining reputations," she said. "I'm protecting mine," I replied. She set a folder on the table, her manicured nails tapping once. "You'll want to think carefully before this goes further. Maison Vert has lawyers. So do I." I opened the folder. It contained a copy of the release form from the fitting signed by a boutique manager and by Sabrina Lowell. There was no client consent attached. I slid another document across the table, one of ours stamped with time and counsel verification. "Your boutique used imagery from a private fitting without permission," I said. They filed a campaign deck using a trademark owned by Ward & Company. They declined to correct it. Everything printed in that article was supported by public record. Vivian stared at me for several seconds, then gathered the folder back, movements suddenly slower. "You've made a terrible enemy today," she said. "I've made peace with worse," I said. She stood. "You think dignity will keep you warm when no one wants to work with you?" "I think integrity already has," I answered. When she left, Nina stepped into the doorway. "That went about how I expected," she said. "She'll escalate," I said, "but she'll have less ground to stand on every hour this runs." By evening, the magazine released an editor's note confirming that Maison Vert had declined to provide further evidence to dispute the claims. The boutique's stock dropped 12% overnight. Sabrina's comment section filled with fire emojis and the word hypocrite repeated like a rhythm. At midnight, a new video appeared on her account. Sabrina sat in a hotel room, eyes red, voice trembling. "I just wanted to bring beauty into people's lives," she said. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Her apology felt scripted, but the caption included a single phrase that mattered. This post is part of a paid partnership. The FTC acknowledged the post the next day, announcing an inquiry into disclosure practices in influencer marketing. For once, transparency was trending. 2 days later, Grant showed up at my office unannounced. He was holding a folder just like his mother had. He didn't sit down. "I'm here for both of us," he said. "My mother wants me to ask if you'll sign this. It's a mutual non-disparagement agreement. It protects everyone. You don't speak publicly about our family, and we won't speak about you." I looked at the folder but didn't reach for it. "You think silence is protection," I said. "It's peace," he answered. "It's avoidance," I said. "Your silence keeps things neat. Mine builds things." "Elena, I'm trying to save what's left of us. What's left," I said, "is everything you didn't protect." He set the folder on the desk anyway. "Please think about it," he said, and left before I could reply. Nina came in minutes later, eyes wide. "You won't believe this. The FTC statement just dropped. They're officially investigating Sabrina's campaign with Maison Verte." I nodded. Good. Let it unfold. Later that week, an email from our counsel confirmed that Ward and Company had no exposure in the matter and that all documentation from our side was airtight. 3 more brands reached out for meetings about ethical communications initiatives. Vivian resigned from 2 fashion boards. The boutique released a press note about leadership restructuring. Sabrina's team announced she would be taking time away from social media. I spent the following Friday in my office watching the afternoon light slide across the floorboards. My phone buzzed with congratulations from colleagues' messages about how the article was sparking industry change. I responded politely, but without pride. I wasn't celebrating. I was exhaling. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the buildings, I poured a glass of water and stood by the window. The city looked like it always had, unbothered by personal victories or public failures. Somewhere out there, a door was closing on an old version of my life. Justice isn't an explosion. It's the sound of a lock turning quietly in the right direction. I closed my laptop. The reflection of the fading light caught on the glass, painting a soft gold line across my desk. Outside traffic hummed, constant and indifferent. Inside, the air was still, and for the first time in months, so was I. Chapter 5. The Dress Code of Dignity. By the time March came, the city had thawed. The snow along the sidewalks had melted into thin gray lines, and Tribeca looked almost new again. Nearly a year had passed since that fitting, though it felt like another life. One morning, I received an email from a name I didn't recognize. It was signed by Miles Bennett, the new CEO of Maison Verte. He wanted to meet. When I walked back into the boutique, the air felt different. The glass was spotless, the lighting softer. The front display no longer showed diamond crowns or designer labels. Instead, it featured a simple sign printed in gold on ivory paper, Maison Verte, an ethical bridal atelier. Miles met me near the entrance, hand outstretched, expression calm. "I've been wanting to thank you," he said. "Your campaign forced this industry to look in the mirror. We decided to rebuild from the inside out." He led me through the showroom. The silence was cleaner now, not performative. Behind each gown, a small tag listed the name of the seamstress and the country of origin. Transparency was part of the brand now. "We're changing our supply chain," he said. "Every vendor will sign an ethical charter. Full traceability, fair pay, real consent for all client imagery. I want you to help us shape it." "What would that look like?" I asked. "You would serve as an advisor, maybe take a small equity stake through Ward and Company. 15%. Nothing symbolic. Real influence." I looked around at the rows of dresses, soft ivory, pale champagne, hand-stitched instead of mass-produced. "On one condition," I said. "The charter is mandatory, not decorative. Every supplier, every photographer, every stylist signs it, and it's audited yearly." Miles smiled. "That's exactly why we need you." We shook hands. It wasn't triumph, it was closure. A week later, my attorney sent the final contract. It was dated January 15th, 2025. The irony wasn't lost on me 1 year to the day since Vivian had first booked that fitting. The The company that once mocked me now had my ethics written into its bylaws. 2 days after the signing, Grant called. His name still triggered something familiar, like a note from a song I used to love but no longer listen to. His voice was softer than I remembered. "Elena," he said, "could we meet just once? I think I owe you that." We met at a small cafe in Soho, the same one where we used to plan our weekends. The city hummed outside. He looked older, or maybe just tired. "I read about your new role," he said. "Congratulations." "Thank you." He stirred his coffee but didn't drink it. "I've been thinking about what happened, about how quiet I was when I shouldn't have been." "Silence is easy," I said. "It sounds like peace until it becomes complicity." He nodded, eyes down. "You were right, I didn't protect you. I thought staying out of it would keep things calm." "You didn't betray me with actions, Grant," I said. "You betrayed me with silence. And silence sometimes is the loudest form of betrayal." He looked up, his voice small. "I'm sorry. I know," I said. "But apologies don't rewind time. They just mark where the truth finally started." We parted without bitterness. As I walked back through Soho, the late winter light reflected off the buildings, gold and clean. I realized I didn't miss him anymore. I missed who I thought he was. By early spring, Vivian had retired to Florida. Her name stopped appearing in society pages. Sabrina deleted her accounts, vanished from the platforms that once worshipped her. Occasionally, a gossip blog speculated about her comeback, but it never came. Life, like reputation, doesn't need punishment to teach balance. It just keeps moving until what no longer fits falls away. In March, I hosted an event in Brooklyn called The Real Dress Code. The venue was a converted warehouse filled with sunlight and quiet music. Dresses hung from simple wooden frames, each one designed by independent female artisans from across the country. None of them cost more than what a middle-class woman could afford. None of them came with humiliation attached. The walls displayed photographs of women who had written to me after the article ran. Brides, designers, stylists, even store clerks. Each story printed beside a portrait. Women who had been dismissed, underpaid, underestimated. They stood next to their words like proof that resilience has its own couture. Nina managed the logistics, walking through the room with a clipboard and a proud smile. Miles greeted guests, discussing the new charter. Rachel arrived with her notepad still sharp, still curious. She had been following the story's aftermath for months. When the crowd thinned, she approached me with her recorder already running. "If you could do it all over again," she asked, "would you have done anything differently?" I smiled, watching a young designer adjust her mannequin in the corner. "No," I said. "I didn't retaliate. I restored balance." Rachel lowered the recorder slightly. "That's rare," she said. "Most people want revenge." "I wanted clarity," I said. "Clarity lasts longer." Later that evening, as the event ended, I walked through the space once more. The lights dimmed to a soft amber. The city skyline glowed beyond the windows. I stopped in front of one display, a gown made of recycled silk, simple and white, the kind of dress no one would ever laugh at for being cheap. Miles joined me quietly. "We're donating half of today's proceeds to women-owned ateliers," he said. "Your idea." "It wasn't an idea," I said. "It was overdue." When the guests left, I lingered by the glass door. The reflection staring back wasn't the same woman from that first fitting. My hair was shorter now, my posture steadier. The silence around me was peaceful, not defensive. They once made me try on dresses that were meant to make me feel small. They laughed because they thought value was measured in price tags. But dignity doesn't have a label, it doesn't wrinkle, and it never goes out of style. As I stepped outside, the city air carried the faint scent of spring. Behind me, the sign on the boutique window caught the last trace of light. Maison Verte, an ethical bridal atelier. I paused for a moment, then smiled to myself. Proof, not rage. That was all it ever needed to be. If you've ever been told you're not enough, remember this. Worth isn't something they hand you. It's something you keep quietly until the world has no choice but to see it. And if my story reminded you of yours, stay a little longer. There are more ways to rise than one.